Hello everyone, welcome to week 4 of the Weekly Wave with me, Alex. I'm going to be discussing my next round of the top 10 albums that I've listened to. This new format could be quite interesting actually. It's been quite good to be able to get another one turned around and straight back out, recording another one already. Obviously the amount of time it takes to listen to 10 different albums is going to range week by week, depending on how busy my schedule is, how long the albums are, how easy they are to digest, and because I don't want to ever just come on here and just talk willy-nilly about them, if you like. Just go straight into them when I've not really given them time to ruminate and I haven't really formed an opinion on them, because that's kind of pointless. There's not much point in me coming on here and saying, I recommend this, I don't recommend this, if I haven't given myself the time to sort of form a proper opinion on it. So I think I'm happy with the 10 today. I feel like I can recommend some. There's some that might be some of the worst music I've talked about, in particular the 10th entry today, since I started off this channel. So let's see what we've got to talk about today. I'm not going to reveal the 10 albums at the beginning of the video this time. I think it's better to go on the journey, reveal them as they come. Might put a couple of little cues in the title of the video, but yeah, let's see what arrives in at number 10 today on week 4. So as I mentioned in the intro, the 10th entry this week is maybe one of my least enjoyable listening experiences I've had since I started making these YouTube videos. The quality has generally been very high, I have to say. I wouldn't have expected to be able to come on here and be so positive based on the general average and the general quality of the albums I've listened to over the past few years. It feels like it hasn't been as positive overall, in terms of my overall enjoyment of all the albums I listen to. I never want it to be too much quantity over quality when I pick out the things that I listen to, and I always try and keep a level of quality to what I pick. Because I don't want to come on here and just be talking about some random rubbish that no one's ever going to want to listen to, regardless of whether I recommend it to them or not. Although you will see a lot of Avenged Sevenfold stuff, which, maybe they appear on today's video. But yeah, the number 10 entry today is a new album released this year, and that is Pale Waves' Smitten. So Pale Waves had an album out a couple of years ago that I listened to that was it picked up a bit of like a pop punk, pretty well produced, nice hooky kind of album, and that was kind of what I was expecting going to this one. I really enjoyed that previous release, but this one, it was kind of a strange listen, even before going into the quality of the songs individually, because it's kind of an album of two halves. The first half starts off a lot more gentle, a lot more hook heavy, poppier, and I would say quite Cocteau Twins inspired. I think it opens with the song Glasgow. I think that might be the opener. The song itself and the songs on this album itself, they aren't badly written and they're not badly performed by any means by the band. But my issue comes with the vocal style, which I hadn't heard on any of their previous stuff. I've not listened to extensively to them, but I don't think they've been around for too long. I don't know if they've had a release before the previous one. And in this one, you might remember a few years ago there was a bit of a phenomenon on YouTube of these worst performance ever videos, where it would take like a live video of a band, they would be edited in post to intentionally drag the vocals out of tune and sort of sabotage the performance, if you like. And in a way, that seems like a conscious direction they went on this album. Quite often you'll hear a line delivered, and then at the end of it, the pitch will just increase. So she'll kind of just put this inflection on the end of the line that just sort of sounds so out of place, and it means it doesn't flow into the next line very well. It was just such a strange decision. It was very Saint Anger Drums vibes to me, where it definitely isn't a question of talent, because as I said, they've released quality music in the past, and this album, Smitten, seems to be more of an outlier in that way, and it isn't a style I've heard before, but it's certainly something that really bothered me when I was giving this album a listen. So I think it was bland at best, the songs anyway. I think even if they'd been performed without that kind of vocal inflection, I would have been probably a little bit like middling on it. I wouldn't have been sort of pulled too far either way. The second half of the album, as I mentioned, it being two-part album, went back more into that sort of pop punk, pop rock direction that the previous album did, which I preferred a little bit. It did remind me more, but and the vocal inflection it didn't fit as much with those songs, so it wasn't used as much, and that was like a huge positive going into the second half of it because I was really struggling to get through it around track 6 or 7. Yeah, it was just weird. It was just weird. It's not often you come across a band really make those kind of drastic style changes just to one element of their sound. But this is something obviously Pale Waves decided sounded good, and if it works for them, it works for their fans, and that's absolutely no problem at all. But for my personal taste, I hope it's something that's contained just to this album, Smitten. So I can't recommend this one too much today at all. I wouldn't be going out of your way to give this one a listen at all. The song Kiss Me Again is probably the one I enjoyed the most, so maybe give that one a try, and if you like it, there is a couple of uses of that vocal style in it, so you'll see what I mean by giving that a listen. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame that I feel this way about this one because I was excited for it when I saw that they'd released again. I was excited to give this one a listen, and I just found myself very disappointed, to be honest. So yeah, shame, but hopefully Pale Waves, next time they release something, I'll definitely be coming back to give it another go. They've got goodwill with me from that previous album, so we'll see where they go from here, but can't recommend Smitten to you. Maybe it's one to avoid, but then again, give Kiss Me Again a try and see what you think. But yeah, Pale Waves comes in at the number 10 spot today with their new album Smitten. Okay, so in at number 9 this week, we have got Motley Crue's Girls, 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 1987 release. Probably most well known for the single Girls, Girls, Girls. It's been probably one of their strongest and longest persisting songs. You hear it played on the radio still now. You'll hear it a lot on Planet Rock, just everywhere. It's in popular media. And Motley Crue are one of those bands that are very much reputation over music. I think now to me at least, when you hear Motley Crue mentioned, it's more for the time that they were performing, their kind of role in music at the time that they were around, and not so much based on high quality release music. They were obviously lookers, they were very popular, and they have a legacy, definitely. They have, I would say, an overall positive legacy in music. You usually have a bit of, the worst you're going to hear about them is someone will have a bit of a groan. If there was someone who was around at the time they were releasing, they'll say, oh, they were rubbish, they were this and that. But ultimately, I think popularity prevails. I think if for a band to become popular, they have to have a certain level of quality and know what they're doing. They have to be marketable, they have to be good, solid performers. Because at the end of the day, if you release rubbish, you don't get the response. Because at the end of the day, music is to be listened to, not to be looked at. And there's only so much you can look at the guys from Motley Crue. Ultimately, the music has to do the talking. So, Girls, Girls, Girls is, how would I describe it? It's probably at its best when it's ballad heavy. My favourite song on this one, You're All I Need, I think it might be it's the closer before that Elvis cover, the live cover, which I'm not even going to go into. I don't think that much needs to be said about that one. But yeah, the song Girls, Girls, Girls was hooky. It's always been one of my favourite big singles from that time. I've actually personally really liked that song, and that's what got me to listen to this one today. So if you like the song Girls, 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 then there's going to be at least another 2 or 3 other songs on this album that you're going to like, because it is copy and paste city when it comes to that song. When it's rockier, it sounds like that. When it's not, there's a little bit more range to be found in the ballad side of their music. And to me, the hair metal movement, if you want to group them in with that crowd, which I would personally, the hair metal ballads are, to me, what is the strongest. I like things like Photograph by Def Leppard, those kind of songs they're just so anthemic, they're so stadium filling, and Girls, Girls, Girls obviously is that on the rockier side. And I don't know if any of these songs really from here were particularly massive in terms of what does fall more on the ballad side. You don't really hear much of Motley Crue played now, aside from their big singles that they had. But this album, it's a bit of nothing. It's not bad, it's creepy, that's for sure. And that's to be expected, I think, when you go into listening to a band like Motley Crue now. That time of music is just so... It's shifted so much, I think, in the public eye in the past few years. given the behaviour of the bands of that time, their kind of reputations now, what went from being so cool back then is now just seen straight up as creepiness and inappropriate, and rightly so, of course. But yeah, I think this is an album that captures the time. I don't think it's something that's withstood the test of time when it comes to listening back to it now. But I think there's a couple of little shining moments, but really nothing that would really pull me back in. Nothing that I could really say to you to go and listen to outside of things like Girls, 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 and that song "You're All I Need" if you want to listen to a bit of a cheesy 80s ballad. So, it's spotty. The vocals are sometimes good, sometimes not so good. Yeah. Not too much more to say about this one, really. I wouldn't go out of your way to give it a listen, only if you're going back to try and get a picture of the time. But yeah, it leaves a strange taste going back and listening to stuff like this, because it is just so synonymous with the behaviour of the bands at the time, which, yeah, not much more needs to be said about that. So yeah, Motley Crue, Girls, 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 not one I'd be saying to go out of your way to listen to. And yeah, we'll leave it at that with number 9. Number 8 this week, we have got Fleetwood Mac's Tango in the Night, and I know it's been a bit of a drag so far. It's been a little bit down. The first 2 albums haven't exactly been stuff that I've been able to shout about and praise too much, but I think this is where you can start to see a little bit more positivity come into these little short reviews. So Tango in the Night is the 14th release by Fleetwood Mac, if you're including their earlier folkier psychedelic days, the Peter Green, Mick Fleetwood time. I know Mick Fleetwood's an everlasting figure, frustratingly, through the Fleetwood Mac discography. But yeah, this was one that arrived right at the end of their real hot streak, with that sort of famous lineup: Stevie, Lindsey Buckingham, Christie and John McVie, and Mick Fleetwood. So this is one that I'd kind of, you see this one passed around all the time. This is one that's always recommended as a good solid pop album from the time, pop rock. If you want to stretch it that far, this is, to me, one of probably the least rocky release of their time. Maybe Mirage is more in that Mirage kind of ballpark for Fleetwood Mac's releases. So of course they've had a bit of a resurgence. Dreams has really taken off the last few years through TikTok, and just how viral that song's sort of gone again. I think it's brought this band back into the eye of the younger audience recently. And I think that some of the best of Fleetwood Mac's individual singles are on this album. One of my personal favourite songs by Fleetwood Mac has always been Everywhere. Little Lies as well, they're both on this album. And Big Love is the opener on here, which I never knew was on this album until I came to listen to it this time. So the singles here, they're really strong. They're really worth going out and looking at. You'll have probably heard them before anyway. They're massive hits. But, I think overall on this album, I think Christine McVie's the highlight. She takes some vocals on both Everywhere and Little Lies. Her voice is, to me, one of my things with Fleetwood Mac is Stevie is best to me as a backing vocalist, because she has that kind of ethereal is a bit of a redundant word for her at this point because it's been used so often, but she has that ethereal kind of vibe to her. And Christine McVie's got that much more deeper voice, something that I think works better with Lindsey Buckingham's voice, because he's just got such a high-pitched voice anyway, the way he chooses to sing, that I think that him and Stevie are a little bit too alike sometimes, and I think Christine McVie and Lindsey Buckingham are much better working together. I mean, Little Lies, the harmonies on that between those two are absolutely excellent. But this album overall, it feels very dated. The sort of deep cuts aren't very memorable to me. I think that's where it sort of falls short a little bit. It's an album of singles. You see that sort of leveled at a lot of albums from around this time, the 80s. I think there was 6 singles from this album. So ultimately, how much of an album listening experience are you going to get from an album that's comprised of so many singles that they're trying to push? Because their singles are designed to be standalone. They're designed to pull you in to listen to the album when they're at their best. Nowadays you'll see maybe 2 or 3 singles per album, and back then it was single city. People were still buying physical copies of music and stuff. There was a lot of money to be made from releasing a lot of singles. So I think it's a little bit of a victim of its time, this album. But definitely it has the usual Fleetwood Mac kind of hallmarks. It's dreamy. It's got great synth work on this one as well, which maybe wasn't as much a thing on their earlier music. And yeah, I do recommend this one to you. It's in number 8 today just purely because I've got personal favourites that are higher up. But yeah, Tango in the Night, this is definitely one to go and check out if you're into your Fleetwood Mac, if you're into easy listening. They've always kind of fit nicely in that category as well. So yeah, check out Tango in the Night, definitely. Everywhere would be my recommendation, but go and give them all. Go and give the full album a listen. There's no reason not to with this one. It flies by. It's easy to listen to. So yeah, go right for it. And yeah, we'll see what's at number 7. So number 7 this week, we have got the return of Avenged Sevenfold, back-to-back weeks appearing on these top 10s. And this may be the last time. As I mentioned, I think previously, the only album of Avenged Sevenfold that I haven't listened to is Life Is But a Dream. They're released from either this year or last year. I can't remember. I think it was last year now. And I will not be listening to that because I'm so put off by the singles, you know. But this album that I'm talking about this week is The Stage. It's a 2016 album, the one before their most recent. And this album is a strange one for me, personally. As I mentioned previously, I'm not going to go too much into my Avenged Sevenfold fandom again, but they're a band that I was a huge fan of in my sort of teenage years, and I've sort of recently come back to listen to quite a lot of their stuff from their peak years. But I thought, you know, I haven't listened to The Stage in years, since it came out probably, 2016. So I thought, give it another go. It's my last opportunity to talk about a Sevenfold album on one of these videos. And I saw Avenged Sevenfold touring this album, and it was a very stage-heavy set list that they chose to play, which to me at the time I didn't really care about too much because I was just such a huge fan of them. We still got the crowd pleasers at the end in the encore, so I didn't feel like I'd missed out on too much. But The Stage is to me now, looking back on it, their step in the Muse direction, if you like. And Muse were a band that I was also a fan of when I was a lot younger, maybe around 10 to 13 years old or whatever. And as you get older, obviously you form your own opinions on all these kinds of different things along the lines of free will, you know, and that's something that has become a big part of rock music for these two bands, for Sevenfold and Muse. And when Muse started moving that direction with Drones and The Second Law, that was where they started to lose me, and this was where Sevenfold started to lose me. They started getting into all their simulation stuff, because they're a band that have always looked forward rather than backwards, which you can admire. It's a good characteristic to have in a band. But when you don't like the direction they go into, it can be difficult to find a lot of positives in their music, and that was a problem for me with this album. So it still has kind of what you call the traditional Sevenfold sound, like they have the dueling guitars, they have their kind of good riffs. You know, they've never been like huge riff masters or anything like that, but they have solid riffs. But this is where M. Shadows, the vocalist, had relearned to sing. He had his Hail to the King style still, much more like operatic and heavy, like a sort of I don't know, like a richer voice. Less of a metal vocalist voice, and just the songs on this just aren't as good, if we're just being completely honest. There's creative ideas here. The lyrical content to me is shallow, and I don't think there's much to it, but that might just be a symptom of the time it came out. Fear of technology and all those kinds of things were pretty big, common societal questions at the time, and this album, it has a couple of highlights. I think it's best when it's not trying to make a statement on anything, when it's just sort of being a bit more. It's hard to say that being shallow is a negative, and then turn it straight into a positive as well. But the instrumental songs, for example, where there isn't so much depth, I preferred. There's such talented musicians, and that comes through at certain points on this album. But yeah, as a big Sevenfold fan, this was a disappointment to me at the time. It's a disappointment a little bit now too, after listening to some of their higher quality stuff from the mid-2000s and stuff. So yeah, The Stage, there's a song, Sunny Disposition. It has probably one of my favourite creative things that they've done, a bit of use of brass, and it's just a bit more of a fun song. You know, it's not, it is heavy, but it doesn't. It's more playful. The lyrics are more playful. So I'd say check that one out. This is probably one of their worst albums. So if you're ever going to listen to any more Sevenfold, just go back to the earlier stuff. I think that's where you're going to find more of the enjoyable content. So yeah, that's all I've got to say about this one, really. It has the Muse syndrome, you know, and it's hard to cure yourself of the Muse syndrome once you've got it, and I think you've seen that with Life Is But a Dream as well. So yeah, that's it for number 7, Avenged Sevenfold's The Stage. Okay, so we're getting there, guys. You know, we're getting towards the more positive end of the list now, and I think this at number 6, Caribou's Honey, new release from this year. It was Rough Trade's album of the month, and managed to pick up a copy of that. And it's, you know, Caribou, they're a big band that I listened to a fair bit of during uni. They're sort of like dance pop, electronic music at the very least. I can't say I'm an expert on their music, but what I've heard has tended to be in that sort of line of style. And this album was just solid. It was good. I mean, and that's why it's around this point on the list. It was a good listen. It sounds great. I'm not someone who listens to a huge amount of electronic music, so when I do listen to it, I do tend to actually enjoy it quite a lot, because it's not something that I'm super knowledgeable about or really put a lot of my own time into listening to. So it's sometimes nice just to hear something that you're not as acquainted with. And for that reason, I don't really have a lot of great criticism for it either, because I don't have a lot of stuff to compare it to, especially in modern electronic. I used to have I went through a couple of years where I was really into, you know, those old Ministry of Sound annual CDs and stuff. I used to listen to those religiously for a little while, but in recent years, my taste has sort of moved away from that style of stuff. But this was a kind of album that a couple of those songs on here could definitely have been on one of those compilations. And Caribou, I think he's a bit of a legend in this style of music. So I'm assuming this is more top end. But yeah, I'm not going to be able to sort of harp on about this one too much. There was a song Campfire that I was really into. I think the guest vocalists on here were really strong, like great performances, good choices, fit the songs really nicely. So yeah, Caribou, I'm not going to harp on about this one for too long, but I'd really recommend this new album, Honey. Give it a try, and let me know if you are someone who listens to a lot of electronic music, what kind of quality you'd sort of place this at. You know, I'm not really the biggest expert in that field, so I'll have to be wisened up and taught the way. So yeah, let me know if you enjoyed this Caribou album, and I would say, yeah, give Campfire a listen and give the whole album a go. Okay, so number 6 is one that I'm quite excited to talk about, and that is Motorhead's No Sleep Till Hammersmith, live album released in 1981. Performances, I think, mostly in Newcastle, if not all in Newcastle. And yeah, Motorhead are a fantastic band. Let's be honest, they're one of the best sort of metal, rock, pioneering, fantastic bands of the 80s, 70s, and beyond. They've got great stuff further on from there as well. So I think that Motorhead are one of those bands that I could just wish I could go back and watch and witness one of their live shows, because everything you hear about it and all of the released music of their live shows is just so good. This was about 4 or 5 years into their career, I think. Things started releasing around 77, 76 kind of time. Obviously, Lemmy had been in Hawkwind earlier and had been kicked from that, and obviously decided to get into something that was more outright punk, heavy, stuff like this. So this set list is excellent. It's not like a long set list. I think there's only about 9 or 10 songs on the sort of original release of this, which is what I listened to. You can get an expanded version of it on Spotify if you really enjoy this kind of thing. But yeah, it's just great songs. You got Overkill, Capricorn, No Class was my personal favourite performance from here. Bomber, just an absolutely fantastic song. Ace of Spades, of course. And it's just a really, really great time in Motorhead's career, full of energy. The drumming is outstanding. Lemmy's vocals are as consistent as always. He's not a mind-blowing vocalist, but he's such a distinctive vocalist that I always really enjoy listening to him. I don't think he's particularly a Marmite vocalist. I think if you're into heavy stuff, you're going to love Motorhead. And yeah, this live album is a really great place to start. It's a really comprehensive, good insight to what they sounded like. It sounds very close to the studio recordings. It's very well produced, great sound quality on it, despite how old it was. And yeah, I just R.I.P. to Lemmy, of course. He's one of the legends of heavy music, and yeah, it's a real shame he only lived for as long as what he did. But you know, his legacy will persist, and it will persist through the quality of their output through their whole career. So yeah, Motorhead's No Sleep Till Hammersmith. Definitely listen to this one. Listen to the whole thing. I can't really even give you a standout song. It's all just great stuff, front to back. And yeah, if you're into your live albums, this is top tier. It's a Mount Rushmore of releases. So yeah, give it a go. Let me know what you thought. And yeah, let's progress on to our number 4 spot. From this point onwards, from number 4, I'm going to say these are 4 of the best albums I've listened to since I started making these videos, and I really implore you to go out and listen to all 4 of these from here. The 3 after this will be 2024 new releases, so definitely go and give them a listen, support those artists. And but yeah, starting off before that, we've got a a bit of a throwback album. We've got Martina Topley Bird's Quixotic, which was a 2003 release. I think she's a British singer-songwriter. And she has collaborated with some of like the greats of sort of alternative and underground music. Tricky, she was the vocalist on his early stuff, I think on that Maxine K album, maybe on, I forget what the other one's called, the one with the bluish album cover on it as well. And her solo stuff is just as high quality, I've got to say, as a lot of the stuff that she's featured on. This album is really good front to back. It covers a lot of different grounds. There's some Tricky on it. There's a song, Ragga, with Tricky that has that kind of trademark, Tricky, groovy, like driving bassy sort of undertones, like grimier stuff. But I mean, this album is just full of great songs. It's a shame that she isn't more recognised now for the talent that she had around this time. I think she still continues to release, so yeah, definitely go out and support her if you ever see her touring. You want to go and see a great gig. I'm sure she's a fantastic live performer as well. But this is the opener, I believe, after the intro. Features guitar work by Josh Homme of Queens of the Stone Age. That's a really great way to start the album off. This was an album that was Mercury nominated. I think it missed out to Dizzy Rascal's Boy in the Corner. I think Radiohead were nominated the same year, but it was receiving a lot of attention at the time. And I think like I say, it's just a shame that she hasn't been able to maintain this strong legacy, because she's not exactly a sort of singer that you see talked about a lot these days. I don't know how much of an international reach she ever managed to really achieve. So this album, Quixotic, I see it as a bit of a classic of the early 2000s of British music. It's sort of, there's some soulful stuff on here, but a lot of it kind of has like, it's sort of a cross between, it has sort of hip hop, like sort of rap style into kind of like beats, but she doesn't sort of go into that style of like rapping or anything. She's very much like a clean vocalist. So, you know, listen to the song Too Tough to Die. It's probably my favourite one off here. One of the best songs of the 2000s. Just so hooky. It has like Bristol inspired, sort of like dirty style production to it. And Martina Topley Bird, like I say, I can't say it enough, she's got a fantastic voice. There's some songs on here maybe that are a little bit sort of pale. They kind of, the idea kind of becomes a little bit repetitive fairly quickly. But the songs aren't overly long, they don't overstay. And I definitely recommend as well, if you can come across the deluxe version of this album, to give some of like the early outtakes and alternative versions a go as well, because there's a lot of I mean, sometimes with those it can be a little bit like you're just sort of throwing out whatever was recorded from the time, but with these ones you can really hear the ideas developing, or hear some alternative versions of how the songs could turn out, given that there's so many collaborators on it. So, you know, definitely give this one a try. Quixotic, I can't really recommend this one enough. It comes in at number 4 on today's top 10. So the third of our 2024 releases we're going to be talking about today, and my third favourite of this week, is La Femme's Rock Machine, which is, honestly, I've got to say, one of my favourite albums in this style that I've listened to. It's sort of like synth, it's not got like a disco sort of drum beat, but it's got those like electronic style sort of things to it going on with it. They're a French band. They're described as psychedelic pop rock kind of stuff, but this album's more of a kind of straight up, I don't know. Like the closest thing I can kind of think of is if you're into your Italians Do It Better, so Chromatics, Desire, things along those lines. Drive soundtrack, if you like, just to throw in a little Drive reference as well. If you're into that kind of stuff, then you're going to absolutely love this. It's got a really, really great sense of humour. The male vocalist on this, if I forget his name, I don't know his name. He has a really, he comes across very like playful. He's got a great personality in these songs. The accent work. They are French, but the accent adds a lot to the way it's performed when it's sort of English vocals. I think they know what they're doing with this. There's some like sort of cheeky lyrics and some kind of like pining romantic tunes on here that I think are really, really good. But the female vocalist, Clemence Quilene, I think her name is, Quilenek, that was it. Don't want to massacre her name as I bring her up, but she's really, really worth mentioning on here because her voice is excellent. It's one of those cases where having two vocalists really improves the quality of this album. And I would say it kind of reminds me a little bit of if you listen to any Baxter Jury and you hear the female vocal on that, how much it enhances his sort of drier style. You get a little bit of that with this as well. There's not a lot of ambitious vocals from the male singer on here. So when Clemens sort of comes in, she really takes over the song, gives it a whole new edge, has that kind of like dreamy quality to it. And these songs are just so good. I didn't really have a high expectation for this one. I'd never listened to any of La Femme's music. They've been around for about 15 years at this point. And, I can't recommend this one enough. It was really good. It's kind of a cross between, like I say, that Italians Do It Better and Air, Justice, kind of like other French electronic performers. It feels very French. And I think that's a very refreshing thing in today's music because we don't get an awful lot of French bands performing in English. And traditionally it's kind of been more instrumental kind of bands with guest vocalists that have come through from France. So give Yeah Baby a listen. I really, really love that one. Really funny, pining, kind of lonely lyrics, but you can just hear that there's kind of like a wink going on. It's like very tongue-in-cheek. So yeah, please give this one a listen. I absolutely love this one. It's going to be coming in really high on my top albums of the year list when that time comes. So yeah, check it out, definitely. I can't recommend this new La Femme album enough, Rock Machine. So yeah, that's our number 3 for this week. And yeah, let's continue into number 2. Number 2 this week, I'm really, really happy to be able to be talking about this album in this position. It's the brand new The Smile album Cutouts, and it's really great to be able to talk about them in such a positive way because I think so far, this is of course Tom York, Johnny Greenwood, and Tom Skinner. I believe his name is Tom Skinner. I need to check if he's called Tom Skinner or not because that might also be the guy from The Apprentice. He's the drummer from he's a drummer from Sons of Kemet, who are a fantastic English jazz band that definitely should be listened to. If you've never heard any of their stuff, it's absolutely fantastic, and the drumming on that it's a great addition to Johnny Greenwood and Tom York. And this album, this is the third of their releases. I think they've released in back-to-back years. There's been an album a year, I think, so far, and this to me is by far the strongest of the 3. I've struggled to really get into their stuff so far. It's kind of felt like a little bit like Radiohead outtakes. I don't think that the drummer, I'm not going to risk calling him Tom Skinner again, just in case, but the drumming on this album, it definitely feels like he had more freedom to do it. And they just sound like a band who, I think you take it for granted that because they've been in a band before together, Johnny Greenwood and Tom York, that they would just have this instant chemistry in this new format. And bands tend to grow as they go along. Radiohead are definitely a key example of that if you look at how their career progressed and their sounds and their ambition and how the band sort of gelled as a whole. And it's great just to hear that this band are starting to really find their own, what works best for them, what makes the best songs. And I think there's a real linear growth across their music, which is really great to see. And it's just so good to see those two still releasing such high quality music, and the same because I don't think Sons of Kemet have released for a couple of years. It's great to see him continue to also contribute to some really, really fantastic music. So this album, it has Tom York's usual kind of playful lyrics, more serious stuff as well, political lyrics. He just has such great sort of way with words, turn of phrase. He really knows how to compile a great set of lyrics for each song and across the full album, and that was always a big strength of Radiohead that's carried over. And on this album I heard the most ambitious Johnny Greenwood guitar work that I've heard for a long time. Of course, on this album, and I think in the band, in The Smile as a whole, Tom York plays bass across this stuff, and Johnny Greenwood takes on like sort of lead guitarist duties. And you know, the song, what was it called, Zero Sum, I mean, that song is absolutely insane. I remember when I listened to it the first time, it kind of, I was ready to check out of it straight away off the bat, because it kind of reminded me of a little bit of Atoms for Peace, the other sort of Tom York side project with Flea and a few others from a few years back. But I mean, the guitar work on that song is absolutely insane. It's so hooky, great lyrics. The Windows 95 kind of refrain that he goes into, Tom York. The song Instant Psalm, I think it's the second song. It reminded me a little bit of Lump, you know, Laura Marling and Mike Lindsay's music from a few years ago. I absolutely love that song. That was definitely my favourite on here. But this album was just such a pleasure to listen to. I was finding myself smiling along with it and just enjoying getting to really sink into a Smile release the way that this one sort of allowed. And yeah, if this was a Radiohead album, and I don't want to bring on too many comparisons because it does an injustice to the additions of the drummer and stuff, and it is a different band at the end of the day, but if you were ranking this even in like the Radiohead discography, I think it would be up there in the top 3. It's that good. So yeah, please give Cutouts a listen. I think it's really them coming into their own and finding their lane, and I think it's going to be one of the albums of the year for me, without a doubt. But it won't be ahead of the album we have at number 1, which is also a 2024 release, and let's get into what that one is to end today's video. So just before we get into our number 1 pick for today, I just want to say I feel very vindicated. The drummer is in fact called Tom Skinner, and as is the guy from The Apprentice, so I can proudly shout out Tom Skinner, the drummer from the Sons of Kemet, as being a fantastic part of that album, and yeah, great stuff. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Bosh! Let's leave it at that. So, number 1, we've got Heriot and their new album, their debut album, Devoured by the Mouth of Hell. So Heriot are very different to everything else on this list so far. They are a sort of British metalcore band, although I would say their stuff sort of ranges more into deathcore at this point. I don't know if maybe they started out more in that direction, but this album is just pure heaviness. The vocals are insane. The tone on everything is just so gnarly and gross and just so heavy and so good, like real like deep heavy sound to this album. God, I don't even know where to start with it. This is probably one of my albums of the year so far, maybe 2 or 3 on my albums list so far for the year. We've got a really comprehensive, great start to finish heavy metal album here, and we've got the vocalist Debbie Goff. She is absolutely brilliant. The growls are insane. It works really nicely when she transitions more into some clean vocals, which is a quality I always think that female-led metal bands have that maybe some male ones are missing. Just that ability to seamlessly transition into some more like spacey parts, and then get a real contrast when the vocals kick back in that more aggressive style. And that's something that I think this band really has over a lot of its sort of contemporaries. And I was really excited for this album to come out since I listened to one of their earlier EPs. That I think maybe came out last year or a couple of years ago, just a shorter album. And this album is just so much more fully developed. The songs are heavy and long and like just really good. And yeah, it's hard to really find enough adjectives to describe how good this album is. I absolutely loved it, and I'm really excited. I'm going to be seeing this band next year, and that I think they deserve all the praise that I'm hoping they're going to get. And this sort of rise that they're on at the minute, I hope it continues for them, because this album is really worthy of it. Definitely the best metal release I've listened to this year, and one of the best overall. So I'd really recommend going and checking out the opener, Siege Lord. But the whole album is just so good front to back. But if you want that kind of dose of your breakdowns and your really like heavy sludgy riffs and bass work, then definitely give that song a listen first to decide if it's your kind of thing. And yeah, I don't think you could get 3 more contrasting albums as the top 3 that we've had this week, which is just why it's such a joy to make these videos and make this content, because it just sort of amplifies to me even more the wide reach of music and how good these albums can be, but despite being so different. And yeah, so just to recap, we've had at number 10 this week, Pale Waves, Smitten, Motley Crue's Girls, Girls, Girls at number 9, Fleetwood Mac's Tango in the Night. Number 7 is Avenged Sevenfold's The Stage, Caribou at 6 with Honey, number 5 Motorhead with No Sleep Till Hammersmith, number 4 Martina Topley Bird's Quixotic, La Femme at number 3 with Rock Machine, The Smiles Cut Out at number 2, and Heriot's Devoured by the Mouth of Hell at number 1. So I hope everyone enjoyed this video again. If you enjoyed it, please give comments, let me know what you thought of some of the albums I talked about today. And yeah, it'd be great to see you come back for episode 5. And yeah, take care guys, see you later.